Good morning. Welcome to the Northland Sports Page. We are live at Hoops Brewing. It's Brian Prudhomme. It's Dave Cook. It is Saturday morning. No opening song today, but Dave, you said you wanted to sing. Go for it.
Yeah. What song should we could sing the Pina Colada song. If you like Pina Colada.
And I do, and I like getting caught in the rain too, but hopefully not today. It is a beautiful Saturday. Let's hope it stays that way.
Yeah, right, because we've paid the due yesterday. We went out yesterday about 10 o'clock to put gas in the car, right? And stopped, got out of the car, almost didn't make it because the door blew shut before I could do anything. The filler thing on the gas tank, I couldn't keep that open. We're standing, leaning forward. Finally, Dana said, get behind the car. It'll be easier. The wind and the rain, it felt like, I don't know, end of November.
I was going to say, your life is a little more adventurous than mine. That sounded like a scene straight out of The Wizard of Oz. But again, we're live down at Hoops Brewing. This show goes till noon, as it does each and every Saturday. We are the Northland Sports Page, but it is a very special Saturday because it is the debut of Monsters Kickoff Weekend, which goes from noon to 1 because it is the debut weekend for the Duluth Harbor Monsters. They'll take to the field. We can't say kickoff too often except for referencing the show because one of the cool parts of this league, they don't kick off, Dave.
Well, I think there's all kinds of interesting things. I don't know about you, Brian, but trying to explain it all week to people, trying to get them jazzed up a little bit. And now I think there's a little bit of a hum in town waiting for this evening, because not only is the throw off or whatever it is they call
it's a throw off.
The six people on the field, everybody can play quarterback. Everybody's running. There is, 10 seconds or 15 seconds between plays. They got DJs playing the whole time. This should not just – so I was telling Dana that it's an event that has a football game. You know, rather than kind of the other direction, this is a thing to take your family to have fun, and we're going to play some sort of crazy fast football along with it.
Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of learning. There is a lot of excitement about the game tonight. I think there'll be a lot of people there, even despite a holiday weekend. I know folks are busy, but you're right. There has been a buzz in the air about the Harbor Monsters team. I think you're also right in the sense that a lot of us don't necessarily know what we're going to see. So this is kind of going to be the learning debut weekend, but we're looking forward to the coaches, players, even the GM showing up to tell us all about it.
I agree. And, you know, here's one of the things. If it's fun tonight, right, like, so if everybody walks out of it and says, this was cool.
Right.
Next time they're home, it could be full. Like, people want this. They want to have fun. They like football. They want a place to take and just be on for an hour and a half, 2 hours. This could be an event, like an event that everybody wants to go to.
Certainly could. Speaking of being on for about 2 hours, that's kind of our Saturday tradition. Dave, we've been doing this for almost 7 years, but back at Hoops, we haven't been here in a while, so it almost feels like a debut show in its own right.
Yeah, it missed coming here. I mean, we used to come all the time, and then the COVID's got us, and then it was, this, that, and the other. And now I think we're going to be back fairly regularly. Yeah,
I do think that we are going to as well. I think the Monster Weekend Kickoff is going to be a big part of why. But it's going to be a good time all summer long. So, as Anthony Edwards might say, bring your ass down to Hoops Brewing because we're going to be here until at least 1 o'clock today. My boss, Nick Stoltman, he's here. He told me I could say that once.
Yep, he had a big finger in the air.
I got it out of the way early. I thought he was doing what's up, brother, for a second, but it was just the one time that I can say that. So there is plenty of time to get here. Come down, have some fun with us. And in true Anthony Edwards fashion, now I'm going to turn it over to Dave Cook.
Oh, my gosh. That was tough. Brian, you know what I want to do to start with, though? I want to talk about our sponsors real quick just to get
it's like you knew what I was turning it over for, yes.
Wait, you didn't turn it over just to talk to me?
No. I love doing that, but not this particular time. I've got another hour and 55 minutes to do that.
All right, let's start with Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer. Heat and cool your house with Kraus. Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, Kohler Hyundai and Kohler Toyota, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Mount Royal Bottle Shop, the Blackwoods Group, including their locations on London Road, Blackwater right downtown, Tavern on the Hill, the locations in Proctor and in Two Harbors. I drove by the Two Harbors location the other day, packed.
You didn't stop? Or is that why you didn't stop?
Okay. I just had to keep going. I did mock interviews in the at Two Harbors High School, and I did some work. Went over to LP out there in Two Harbors as well. It was a busy Two Harbors day for me the other day. Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance, Arola Architecture Studio, and Hoops Brewing, where we are right now.
I was going to say, that's where the party's happening today. Again, we go until 1, this show till noon. And again, Monsters Weekend Kickoff goes from noon to 1. The GM of the Harbor Monsters, Steve Walters, is actually in the building. I don't know if he wants me to say why, but I'm going to. He's dropping off a new wardrobe for me, I appreciate that.
This is going to be a good look.
I will be Harbor Monsters clad from head to toe as often as I can. And I got a feeling... I need a gator? I got 2 dogs. That's enough. I don't know that we need a gator, do we?
Well, I don't know. I got a head nod there from Jen, so I think the Gator thing might be a thing.
Well, I was going to say we're very grateful for our sponsors, but you mentioned going past the Two Harbors Blackwoods location that you don't like big crowds. So right now you can savor the moment because we'd like to thank our audience for being here. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Laverne. Thanks, Jay. Let's see if we can get
really loud, would you?
Let's see if we can get that audience increased between now and 1 o'clock. We'll see how that goes. But
great.
But our diehards are certainly here. It's a different type of OnlyFans for you and I. But again, it's Brian Prudhomme. It's Dave Cook, and Nick Stoltman is here too. Let's say hi to Nick because again, he's my boss and I love him dearly. But I got my one opportunity to misbehave out of the way early.
You got it taken care of.
I did. But your microphone apparently isn't exclusively taken care of, and that's
why
because we were
we're
playing with
figuring
muters.
this stuff out, yeah.
I think we're good now.
All right, there we go.
There we go.
Isn't Muter the truck and cars, the little rusty tow truck guy?
You're asking the wrong guy about automotive types ideas, but I will tell you this.
Mater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this, the Timberwolves strength and conditioning coach that we've talked to before is Eric Muter, and I'm wondering what his take might be because I don't think the Timberwolves are getting out physical. They're just simply getting outsmarted by a more experienced team.
Yeah, they'll tell you they're getting out gassed, but I agree with you, Brian. I think there were some plays, especially last night, where it's almost like they expected somebody else to make it happen. You know, we've talked to, Steve Patosha, we've talked to Rhett, we've talked to coaches all over the place who bring up the phrase passenger. You know, don't be a passenger, be the driver of the bus. And it seems like right now the Timberwolves want to have a bunch of passengers and there's nobody willing to take the bull by the horns.
It does appear that way, and the weird part is this series has been 96 minutes long, 2 48-minute games. I read somewhere, I think on social media, I'm going to say Twitter, even though the kids call it X, the Wolves have led for about 80% of this series, yet they're down 0-2.
Elon Musk wants to call it X, too. He had some.
The owner might have something to say about that.
Dave's making up words again, and it's early in the show.
Right. Well, hey, today's going to be that day.
You know, when you go to a restaurant or a hotel, you run into the Muter D, right, Nick?
Exactly.
That's what Dave would say.
I'm a guy that orders stuff off the menu, Brian, because they don't understand what I'm saying anyway. But the idea that the Wolves are truly just kind of going through the motions when it matters. It's confounding. The play last night where Anthony Edwards was trying to make some things happen, made the pass to McDaniels. Yeah, I just went with the last name there. Made the pass to McDaniels and put him in just a horrible spot towards the end of the game. It's like, what are you doing? You had time left on the shot clock. You're ahead. Just bleed a little bit of time.
Yeah, this has been a difficult series for Anthony Edwards. I don't think it, discourages us from feeling the way we do about him in terms of a future star or a current star, but the Wolves are certainly going to have to get it together. We're kind of still waiting for the debut of the Timberwolves team that we've gotten used to in this postseason because they've been a little bit of a shell of themselves. But again, the big story of the weekend is the debut of the Harbor Monsters. Yes. I mentioned Steve Walters being here. I mentioned him outfitting me in a big way, but he also brought a bunch of tickets. So if you'd like to come down today and get your hands on some tickets, good opportunity to do that as well. Come to Hoops Brewing.
Right, come to Hoops Brewing. Enjoy Dave Hoops and a group's product. Like, their product is top notch. I've already seen a whole bunch of raspberry wheats being consumed, and it's early, guys. And so,
well, again, we named the people that are here, so we know why that's happening. But go ahead.
It's going to be quite the day at about 12:30. But the Harbor Monsters being here. Come on in, not just come and listen to us, because why wouldn't you do that? But it sounds like we're going to have some players. We're going to have the coach. We've got the GM here already. Not only will you get to talk about the Harbor Monsters, but you're going to get to talk to the Harbor Monsters and see what they think as well.
So, again, that big show comes your way from noon to 1. We'll do the heavy lifting from now until noon. But speaking of heavy lifting, I mentioned you and Nick Stoltman. You guys are the reason that we're able to be here because a lot of heavy lifting this morning to get set up here as well.
Here, I thought you were making fun of my diet there for a second.
No, I should be the last guy to do that. That's like me telling someone they run too slow. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, Nick, thank you very much. This is a whole different thing now, Brian, because how long have you and I kind of, griped that we couldn't have like a coach's show? Right. Because we have 2 microphones, and what are we going to do? But now we're learning that we can use 5
We
mics.
could actually put every person in the crowd on the air right now if we wanted to.
We could. Yeah. But, come
Laverne's going, don't threaten me with that good time.
Come hockey season, come football season, we're going to be able to have ourselves a little bit of coaching roundtable. Maybe right here at Hoops.
We may just do that. So, again, we're very grateful for our sponsors. We're grateful for everybody here at Hoops Brewing, and we hope to see a much bigger crowd as the day goes on because, again, back-to-back shows. Get used to that on your Saturdays during the Harbor Monsters season. Northland Sports Page, noon to 1. Monster Weekend Kickoff. From noon to 1. Northland Sports Page from 10 to noon. So many shows, I don't know when I'm on where.
Thank goodness
but
I didn't say that.
The key is I'm on. I know I'm talking, and I know what's going on over the air, so that's a good thing. But, again, Dave, I'll go back to what we said in the beginning. In November, it'll be 7 years that we've done this, but almost each and every week feels a little bit like a debut show because there's always that little bit of nerves, a little bit of excitement, a little bit of, hey, we got to care about this, this, and this. But that's also what makes it fun. My dad was the guy that said, if you don't care about it, don't do it.
Right.
I think we care a lot about this.
Yeah, 100%. I was doing mock interviews and whatnot in Two Harbors, and there was a kid that came in, and he said, oh, my gosh, I'm so nervous. And I was like, well, of course you're nervous because this should matter to you. Right? If it doesn't matter to you, you're not going to, the nerves aren't going to be there because you don't care.
Right.
And since this matters to us, and it matters to us every Saturday, the little bit of nerves is okay.
Absolutely. It lets me know that I care. But again, the big story of the weekend is going to be the debut of the Harbor Monsters. So what we're going to talk about today for our opening topic is debuts that you were excited about in Minnesota or overall sports. And of course, debuts usually pertains to rookies. But it doesn't always have to do that. It can be you were excited for this person to debut in Minnesota. One of those, hey, we finally got this guy. Because one of the first, and I'm staring at Nick Stoltman, the big Viking fan that he is, one of the first that pops into my head is Brett Favre.
That was exactly what popped into my head.
What is the Messiah from our neighbors to the east going to look like in purple? That was very anticipated.
Well, thankfully we had the brief period where he was in New York to kind of create a buffer.
Right.
So it wasn't like he just jumped the border.
So with the border battle, you'd say that created a bridge?
Exactly.
Oh, see what I did there? My wife just looked at me like, we don't have kids, and that's a dad joke. Go ahead.
No, that I think was the one that comes to mind the most because, like you said, it wasn't a rookie situation, but it was something where we've seen this guy do this thing to us how many years and years and years, and finally, let's see what he does while wearing our jersey.
Absolutely, and what he did was great for half of it because 2009 was an absolutely memorable season. Of course, we remember how it ended, and that wasn't good, but we talked about 2010. Dave, you know how much I hate the unfinished business mantra of a season. So again, to relate it back to the Timberwolves, let's say they do fall short. I hope they don't come back with an unfinished business mantra and go 30-52 next year, but let's go ahead.
You know that's going to happen, right?
Why you got to say that?
I don't. We're not going down the Minnesota sports road today. I don't. I'm going to go Brett Favre on that. I've said it before. With the Wolves, the pieces are in place, so they should be okay. But let's start with the Vikes because Favre was the headliner. When you think of debuts that you anticipated, whether it was a rookie because you're the draft Bobo with a capital B, or if it was, hey, we finally got this guy to wear purple. Who are you looking for?
Well, there's an easy one, right? And that's Moss because everybody was. I mean, I shouldn't say everybody. I know that.
I was going to say, I wasn't, but I'll expand on that in a minute.
I watched a little bit of Marshall football, and explaining Randy Moss in college is a little ridiculous. But I'm going to go outside of the Vikings real quick.
Okay.
Because the guy I wanted to see, and he was drafted, and he didn't want to play for that team, so he sat out, took up baseball a little bit. Then came back the next year as Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson in college football was one of the coolest players I've ever seen. And in a pro, if he didn't get hurt, Bo Jackson might be the guy that we compare all NFL running backs to.
Yeah, I still think it's the best athlete I've ever seen in person, and you can pick a sport because I saw the Raiders demoralize the Vikings. I use that word because that's what Bo's running attack did. I saw that at the Dome. I saw an outfield arm in a Royals uniform against the Twins, and I went, he threw it from where to where? Without a bounce? I mean, that was absurd. So Bo is in a league by himself. The Moss thing is a great point. I think the majority of our listeners are nodding their heads in agreement. But I still go back to when the Vikings selected Moss. They had Chris Carter. They had Jake Reed. Guys who could catch the ball were not the problem. And I remember going, why?
And he had remember, his MO was attitude problem. Right? So he picked a talented wide receiver with an attitude issue.
So I guess in my own way, I was anticipating his debut because I was going, how in the bleep are they going to use this guy? You don't need another receiver, but I stand corrected. Let's just say that. Right. I've been wrong before. It's happened, I think, 3 times now. That was one of them. But at the same time, the Vikings, I don't think, had too many other debuts that I was highly anticipating. I think everybody anticipates the debut of the draft guy. I think this year with J.J. McCarthy, that's going to be huge.
So I was going to say, we know how this panned out, but I was going to say, okay, so the last time the Vikings, in recent memory, drafted a quarterback with anticipation of starting, Christian Ponder.
Right. I don't know that I anticipated that one. I know I turned out to be really, really right, but I don't know if I anticipated that one much.
So I did, but the reason he had to start is the fallacy here, because we had thought, I mean, like now, we had Donovan McNabb.
You got the worst version of Donovan McNabb you could get.
He was going to play for the year, and then Ponder would have been okay. And you know what? That might have happened.
Donovan McNabb used to do the chunky soup commercials. You got the chunky version of Donovan McNabb. Well, that's what you got.
I was thinking, we complained a little bit to start the show with Anthony Edwards making passes. You should have seen Donovan McNabb.
When he
six-topped the running back, you went, well, Ponder's going to start.
That's not fair. I didn't complain. I just turned it over to you. That's all I did.
That's kind of the
Nick,
same
you
thing.
mentioned Adrian. That's another Moss-like for me because I really like Chester Taylor, and I went, now what happens?
Right.
Why were we granted, we drafted the next superstar, but why did we do it at a position that we felt we were already set?
Oh, well,
Because it was Adrian.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty simple.
What are you, Sylvester Stallone?
Yes.
Because it was Adrian.
Yeah. Well, yes. That's fact.
All right, fair enough. So we've tackled football, and we'll do a lot of that with the Harbor Monsters later today. What sport do you want to go to next, and whose debut did you look forward to?
Well, I'm going to toss one other football guy because I didn't get a chance to say Herschel Walker. Because when Herschel Walker came out of college and he went to play for Don Trump, right?
Right.
And
USFL.
when he tore apart the USFL, it was like, okay, I cannot wait to see this guy in the NFL.
Well, and I'll tell you this, if you want to go further, I was anticipating his Vikings debut, and it was awesome, and that was it.
Yeah.
The second game was the problem and beyond.
I always have to remember that Dad was the one that said, hey, you know what, before you get super excited about this guy, and he listed off like 10 different reasons, and you know what? He was 9 for 10.
All right, so because basketball has been the talker, good, bad, or indifferent, do you want to go to the NBA next? Because I think, again, we're not really pulling deep cuts out today to start, but Kevin Garnett's debut was anticipated all on its own because not only was he going to be the next big thing in Minnesota, but it was a high school kid coming right to the NBA, and now it's fairly common. I mean, now it's not allowed because they adopted the one-and-done rule again, but, you know, there was Kobe after that. There was LeBron after that. People did it, but KG was the pioneer, and it was, you know, this kid is literally 19. What's he going to do at this level? The answer was a lot.
I'll tell you that as much excitement as that was, at the time, it was a high school kid and we didn't know what to expect. Right? I'll tell you, KG coming back was
That's your favorite moment in Minnesota sports, I think, from an emotional standpoint.
I think it is. I remember stopping the world and just saying, okay, this is the most important. And here's the thing. I watched like the next quarter and a half. Right. After that, it was like, okay, well, he's here. This feels great. Karl Anthony Towns is going to be something now. And none of that happened, but coming, that's the one that I was looking most forward to. But there's a lot of draft picks, Brian, that we've been excited. You know, again, a huge J.R. Ryder guy, and I watched him play in college, and I thought that skill set is going to play in the NBA, and it would have had he cleaned up the rest of it.
Or if they just had slam dunk competitions, and that's how you decided who won.
He was
like tremendous at that.
He was built like Anthony Edwards back in the day, and so I thought he was going to dominate, and he did, just not on the court.
Well, JR was your draftee that you got wrong. For me, it was the guy that is the third guy in a two-player draft. There was that draft where Shaq went 1, Alonzo Mourning went 2. The Wolves got stuck with Christian Laettner. And I didn't necessarily think they were stuck with anything because Duke's success was kind of shoved down our throat at the NCAA level, and Laettner got 20, 25 a game, and I thought, okay, he's going to come to Minnesota and get 20, 25 a game. Autographs, maybe. That's about it.
Well, yeah, that's very true. You know, Laettner was, remember, he made the dream team, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was that guy. The funny one, Brian, is the draft we always pan, the draft we always make fun of, and that's the Steph Curry draft.
The Flynn Rubio draft.
Yeah, because Rubio,
we can't call it the Curry draft. We didn't get him.
Oh, my gosh, we got Ricky Rubio.
Yeah.
And at that point, that was correct. Ricky Rubio might have been the most famous basketball player in the world right then.
Right.
But I remember drafting Johnny Flynn and for some reason putting my faith in their general manager at that point, saying, you know, Johnny Flynn had this one great game. Maybe they know something that I don't see. So being excited about Johnny Flynn and then actually watching him play. The first couple gimes he was good, then he hurt his hip, and then we didn't see from him at all. But there have been so many interesting, you know, guys starting for the Timberwolves. You know, even a guy like Michael Olowokandi, because you got to remember this Timberwolves team is fun. And if you're just jumping on the basketball bandwagon, there is a time, well, not a time, for most of their existence, they've been bad. And so we've always waited for the next superhero to come. Do you remember Joe Smith? When they got Joe Smith, there's a number 1 overall pick. And he was going to come in, make Garnett whole, and then he ended up, you know, hurting the franchise for 15 years with the draft pick issue. You know, when we got Rod McCants, because he came in from He came in from North
Did
Carolina.
his friends call him Rod?
Yes.
Rashad McCants?
Yep.
I did not know that.
His sister
to go
called him that.
to go Dana Carvey being
Yep.
Johnny Carson. I did not know
Yeah,
that.
no, that was what his sister used to call him.
All right, fair enough. I didn't know you knew her. Why haven't we gotten her on the show?
She was on the links, if I remember right.
I love when Nick and I do stuff and you have to ad lib. Go ahead.
Right. That was solid work. Let's be right here.
Yes.
But Olowokandi, remember he was a top. I think he might have been the number 1 overall pick. We've had a lot of number 1 overall picks here. Just none of them.
I was going to
out.
say we had him after the fact, and Joe Smith. He did his part to basically ruin the franchise. Don't forget Anthony Bennett was a number 1. It's one we didn't necessarily need.
God, that guy.
I'm going to go with one more who was a veteran, but I was looking forward to his Timberwolves debut. To me, Tom Gugliotta was the first guy that had proven himself somewhere else that was willing to come here, and I thought we might actually be a legitimate basketball team. I tried that theory with Chuck Person. Chuck Person tried his best to prove me wrong, and he did.
Yeah, I thought here you were going to say AK-47.
I did like him with Utah. I did. Andre Karolinko.
Yeah, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Because
Dave and I could play the newlywed game, and we would win.
Oh, yes. In fact, many people that know us would probably say yeah.
It's scary.
The other guy that I was always super intrigued to see play for the Timberwolves was oh God, I hate when I do
I'll help you.
Right.
Just give me a college or a number or a time frame. I can get it.
Stacey King, that's it.
He did play for the Wolves. After the Bulls.
When Stacey King played for the Bulls, it always felt like he was the guy that never got the ball.
Right.
So now we're going to get him here, treat him like they treated him in Oklahoma, and all of a sudden we're going to have something, and there was a reason he didn't get the ball all the time in Chicago.
Absolutely. Speaking of Chicago, our first guest today at about 10:30 will be Pete Crawford, former UMD Bulldog, who is now the Director of Player Development for the Chicago Bulls and has also had a video coordinator role with the Dallas Mavericks, and he's been part of staffs with Rick Carlisle and Jason Kidd, two coaches that
this will be good.
Are pretty active right now, and it'll be interesting to get his perspective on what's going on with two series that are 2-0. Everybody says the Pacers are in trouble. I'm not sure they are yet because it's not a series till somebody loses at home. As far as the Timberwolves go, we did that twice.
Yeah,
we doubled down on that one.
But here's, again, the Timberwolves are the more talented top-to-bottom
Yes.
team. So we just wait for Karl Anthony Towns not to have to sit for the last 8 minutes of the game because foul trouble and, well, they think other people can perform. Got to have your number 2, Brian, playing at the crunch time.
Right. So you mentioned Bo Jackson before. Do you have a basketball guy not in Minnesota that you look forward to? Because I have kind of a laughable one because now it's more common. Because you look at how many really, really tall players they are. Like 7.5 feet is more common than it used to be. Like I remember when Robert Parrish and Kareem, that was beyond tall. I have to laugh.
Say minute ball.
No, close though. The lighter complected version. I looked forward to Sean Bradley's debut, and I don't know why. I just couldn't believe what 7'6", 7'7", even like a George Mirasan. What is that going to look like? Well, not a lot of talent, but a lot of height.
Well, that's why the Rookie of the Year this year, and I'm not going to pretend to say his name.
Victor Wembanyama. I got you.
That's why when he plays and he does the things he can do, our experience with 7'5" is lumbering.
Right.
And he's anything but.
Well, and to me, everybody's 7'5". When you're 5'5" on a good day, it's a different perspective altogether. But all right, so we've knocked out a couple of sports. We've gotten NFL and NBA done. We're talking about debuts that we highly anticipated because we are doing that this weekend at the Deck, 7 o'clock. I know the tickets say 7:05, and by the time we get all of the fanfare out of the way, we don't know what time the actual throw-off will be. But the important part is it's the Dallas Falcons and the Duluth Harbor Monsters at the Deck tonight. Lots of pregame fanfare right here on this station, especially noon to 1, a Harbor Monsters exclusive show that we're looking forward to. So debuts, you want to go baseball, you want to go hockey next?
Well, let's start with baseball. Let's just go there because
good, because I got about 1.5 hockey debuts I was looking forward to. I just don't have that many.
My hockey debuts are always college kids that came and played for the Wild.
Right.
So with baseball, it's the guys that we always thought should play here. And then when we see them actually come and play here.
Craig Monroe syndrome.
Craig Monroe, what's his name?
Cleet Thomas.
That used to beat us like a rented drum.
Yes.
But I think the big one for me, and this is going to, one, tell you how much I oogle out on minor league stuff, and two, how when there's a trade made, you always try to reach for the grasp. It's David West. It's always been David West.
The Viola trade?
Yes. He was the guy. He was one of those pitchers in the minor leagues because he ate the Mets system alive. He was that guy. He was big, threw hard, had nasty breaking stuff, and then got to the major leagues. And guess what major league hitters can do? Hit velocity and breaking stuff.
Right. He basically had one good appearance in a World Series game. May he rest in peace. David West was supposed to be a big deal. Interesting you mentioned that trade with the Mets, because I can go to another one. Everybody got a little bitter when we sold Johan for what in the world did we get? Carlos Gomez was supposed to be the centerpiece, literally in center field.
Yep.
I remember watching his first couple games going, wow, this is an athlete. He's quick.
He has no idea what he's doing.
His baseball IQ is in the negatives. What in the world is going on out here?
Actually, you know who else said that? Carlos Gomez.
Right.
What in the world's going on out here?
I'm just playing.
But you know, we were talking about this over the week. It's interesting how the Johan trade and the Kevin Garnett trade happened so close to each other.
Right.
And what did we get in return? A bunch of bit parts for both. I said bit parts for both.
Well, Nick's here and he's just glaring at him like, you're not fired yet.
I said bit parts.
It's a different sort of everybody gets one.
I had something to drink right beforehand, a Coke, and so
Nick, does that mean I get two?
No, a bunch of bit parts.
Double down on it.
We got Al Horford, and we got not Al Horford, Al Jefferson, and we got your guy that you just said, Carlos, and then everybody else in the both trades.
Wow,
was just
come on now, Al Jefferson
pieces.
was pretty good,
right? And Gomez was okay, but everybody else was just stuff.
All right, that's fair, and I think I would be remiss if I don't tell this story because it's almost laughable that I anticipated his debut. But are you ready, Dave? Because I can make our limited audience make some noise. So I'm going to tell a story about my dad. Round of applause or a little bit of noise if you got to know my dad at all. So one of the final Twins games that we ended up going to was Kyle Gibson's Twins debut. And my dad was a little bit like you, Dave, in that he anticipated a kid in a big moment, whether he was decorated in the minors or not. So Kyle Gibson's debut season, the Twins were bad. There was next to nobody at this game. So we had the front row of the Legends Club to ourselves. Kyle Gibson's pitching 6 innings. He's given up 1 run. He's in line for a win. In the 6th, he gets into a major jam. And first and second, 2 out, and it's going to be the biggest pitch of the game. The little bit of the crowd is making noise. Strike 3, he gets out of it. Have you seen the movie Naked Gun?
Yes.
So my dad, in a bundle of real estate that he's got in the front row, goes full-on Leslie Nielsen, strike 3, goes all the way up and down the row by himself. I've never seen my dad more into a game in my entire life. The Twins probably finished 63-99 that year, but one win for me was Kyle Gibson's debut, and it was the most fun moment I've had at Target Field in my life because you would have thought with my dad we won the World Series again.
The final one I got for you, Brian, is the one that I drove around the country to see. And that
Byron
was
Buxton.
When I got a chance to read a little bit, like Dad and I, speaking of Dad, we drove down to Cedar Rapids to watch him play. And when he hit the majors, like I was so excited. And now I've been to as many games as he's been to.
Right. That's fair. Yeah. That's fair. He apparently doesn't like big crowds either. So you're more with the kids and their debuts, and I know how much you get into that. I'm more of the chiseled, wily old veterans and what do they have left? Because Dave Winfield, for me, in a Twins uniform was a huge deal. But don't blink and it was over.
He was just the last of the group of kids from St. Paul that showed up
to make
for
the trek. Steinbach, so Morris, Molitor.
If he would have been first, yeah, I might agree with you. But it was just like, oh, hey, guess what? We brought another Cretin-Durham Hall guy back.
He still did well.
He still did well. Like, he was a big part. Molitor did well. Morris did well. Terry Steinbach did well.
Molitor's season is one of my favorites because he had 100 RBIs and he had less than 10 home runs. You don't see that anymore.
Imagine if Puckett hadn't gotten hurt.
I do that just about every day. My dog's named Kirby, and I think about it all the time.
That lineup, though, that lineup would have been good, Brian.
So Brian, veteran guys, how did you feel about when Torrey Hunter came back?
I think it was a rejuvenation of this team. I think I wanted to see it because I was surprised he was willing to do it. Because the rest of the roster, I thought, boy, you must really like it here because why do you want to join this? But that's a good take because what he did to kind of bring good baseball back, I think that was under Molitor too.
I believe so,
was pretty darn impressive. That's a great take.
I was trying to think,
it's a good thing that we bring him.
Yeah, otherwise I got the amateur
occasional contribution.
Yeah, we absolutely swung and missed, but he got it done. But otherwise, yeah, I think you look at the group from St. Paul that came over, and I think you anticipated all of them. One guy that I didn't, and I should have because we all know how it ended, I didn't like him so much with Detroit. I didn't care that Morris was here. I just didn't.
Well, and let's be honest. We've talked about this over 7 years. Without Game 7, Jack Morris is just a guy that pitched for a year.
Right.
Like, he was a good pitcher, but nothing special.
So without the 600th home run coming in a Twins uniform, is Jim Thome just a guy we decided to turn into Paul Bunyan?
Jim Thome's the guy that baseball fans said, man, if we could have Paul Bunyan, right? If we could ever get him here, and then when we got him here, he was already revered when he walked in the door. And so I think Tomey's a little bit different. It would be like if we got somebody like Vlad Guerrero come, because he's kind of.
I like the way you think, because have you seen the trade rumors lately?
I have.
I will be anticipating that debut like you wouldn't believe. If Vlad Jr. wants to come here, you can stay at my house. It's only 150 miles to Target Field.
Would you drive him?
Well, no, because I want him to get there safely.
Well, I thought maybe you'd drive him there.
You've asked me if I would drive, and you've asked me about automotive questions today. Hi, I'm Brian. Have we met? Not a great topic for me.
All right, so let's go to the last one. NHL. I think it's Danny Heatley. I think it's the guy from the University of Minnesota who I just spaced, who's probably my favorite goalie.
Faber?
No, Vanek. So I think it's Heater. I think it's Vanek, and that's kind of it.
For me, there's two. It was Brian Rolston, because I just wanted to see a guy that said, forget skating around you, I'm just going to shoot through you. And again, he and Joe Nathan were the reason I had a soul patch for 10 years. Judge me accordingly. But then it's also Kirill, because it was almost political just to get him over here. I mean, he was hyped up forever, but how do we get this kid here from Russia? Well, from Russia with love. Thank goodness we did.
I think there's a lot of guys that when you hold out there when they start and you're building anticipation, it's not unlike a TV drama or a movie where you hold out that payoff. People get more and more and more and more invested.
Right.
And then the Yurov kid that's over in Russia right now, that at 18 was the captain of a team and they won the championship, and he said, give me another year here. Hardcore Wild fans are like, oh, come on.
Right. Well, and I think otherwise, outside of the Wild, it is basically that this is the state of hockey, and this is an area that produces a lot of them, because it's not necessarily guys that played for the Wild. It's guys that played for Hermantown and East. It's Dylan Sandberg.
It's Joey Pierce.
Pionk. It's Dom Toninato. It's Derek Forbert. It's, I don't care who they're playing for, but they're one of us, literally.
It's not even in the NHL in this case. It's guys showing up for college. I've told you from the time he played in Ely, I can't wait to see Joey Pierce play at a professional level. And so when he came to UMD, that's one of them as well for me.
Absolutely. Speaking of a professional level, we're trying to bring that to a broadcast today. The Northland Sports page, we go till noon, and Monsters Weekend Kickoff will follow from noon to 1. It's all happening here on the Fan. It's all happening at Hoops Brewing. Still plenty of time to come on down here. There are Harbor Monsters tickets available. There is great beer available as well. You can't go wrong. We're going to take a break. When we come back, as promised, Pete Crawford, former UMD Bulldog, who has quite the NBA resume. He'll join us by phone. Stick around. We will be right back. And welcome back once again. We are live at Hoops Brewing. It's the Northland Sports page. We are here until 12 noon with this show, but then again, noon to 1. Monsters Weekend Kickoff as we christen the Duluth Harbor Monsters season. 7:05-ish, the throw-off. We can't say kickoff as we learn more about what this Arena League will be all about. It's going to be a lot of fun. Football-wise today with Harbor Monsters taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Nope, it's the Dallas Falcons, but that's been the fun.
That's a combination of teams that we really don't care for.
But that's been the fun joke of the day. I actually did that on purpose because on some of the Harbor Monsters social media, if you've seen that in the comments, they've said, oh, the Harbor Monsters are in for a big surprise because Dallas called out and Atlanta's coming, so they don't have to reprint tickets. So hopefully that's
very true.
Hopefully that's not the case, and we will talk a lot of football in the latter moments of this show, and then, of course, throughout the afternoon as well. But again, the big talker, guys, has been basketball, and it's been thanks to the Timberwolves, etc., and things aren't going particularly well for the Timberwolves right now, down 0-2 and headed to Dallas for Game 3 tomorrow. Wonder what Coach Jason Kidd and his team will have in store for the Timberwolves in that contest. But we get kind of a lucky break here, Dave, because connections galore is what we like to say we have. We had no idea that we were a couple degrees of separation away from a guy who was once part of the Maverick staff.
Yeah, and the ability to give us insight that as a fan looking from the outside, we just, there's no way we could even fathom. I'm just super interested to hear, how at the NBA level, looking inside, how they'd handle something like this.
And a different sort of journey because it is a former UMD Bulldog as well. We love to localize things, and this one is easy. So without further ado, we bring in Pete Crawford. Pete is with us by phone. Pete, good morning. Thanks for doing this.
Good morning. Appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, I am a, proud Golden Valley native, and I, played at UMD for Coach Holquist and Coach Bowen from 2010 to 14. And then I was a GA at Augustana in Sioux Falls for 2 years. And then I was a player development intern for the Mavs for 16-17 with Coach Carlisle. Then I spent 6 years in the video room after that, 4 for Coach Carlisle and 2 with Coach Kidd. And now I just got done with my first year in Chicago as a player development coordinator with the Bulls. So it's been kind of a long journey, but I've loved it. I'm incredibly lucky, and it's been great there's no better time than the playoffs, so it's been great to watch.
Absolutely. That sounds like quite a journey. Let's go back to kind of the roots of where it started. When did you decide that was a journey you wanted to take? Obviously, you've had a passion for the game, but, being in the video room, that sort of thing, those aren't positions, respectfully, that you hear a lot about necessarily or hear about how to pursue them. When did you know, hey, this is the direction I'd like to go?
For sure. And again, like I said, I've been incredibly lucky. I didn't play in the NBA. I don't have agent connections. I don't have somebody I know that's in the front office. Like, I kind of realized, like, I got to kind of, work your way up. And especially if you didn't play in the NBA, that's kind of what you have to do. Frank Vogel, who started in the video room, Eric Spoelstra, Coach Carlisle was the president of the Coaches Association. So guys would always come through Dallas. And Frank Vogel told me, he was in there talking to us. He started in the video room, worked with Coach Pitino. He pointed at the computer screen. He was like, if you didn't play in the NBA, you have to know what's going on and be able to help these guys. That's the only way you can gain credibility.
So speaking of that
was great advice that I got, and it's so true. But I was pretty fortunate. I was an intern in Dallas. I saw the position posted online. I knew I wanted to coach, but I was like, there's no way. I was good with coaching in college. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be in the NBA.
So speaking of that, some of the best minds in NBA coaching staffs or in NBA rooms aren't necessarily guys that put up huge numbers in the NBA as a player. But then you look at Jason Kidd, and he's a bit of an exception. Obviously, everybody knows who he is. Larry Bird coached and coached well. Magic Johnson coached and not so well.
Magic had a little short run. Yeah.
Right. But how do you think it transfers? Because the old adage is some of the best players don't make good coaches because too many things came naturally. And some of the best minds that had to think about it more do better as a coach. What makes Jason Kidd the exception, in your opinion?
I think he has grown from his time in Milwaukee, from his time in Brooklyn. And to me, there's no better coach. And Nico Harrison, their GM, said in the ESPN article, there's no better coach for Luka and Kyrie. He understands these guys. He sees the game. Like when, Luka and Kyrie and Jason Kidd, when they watch film, like, the stuff they see is like, it's crazy. Like, they're so advanced. They see the smallest details. And you see the shot Luka hit last night, he got to his go-to, his number one move, which you never want to let guys get to in the playoffs. But those guys, they're just so elite. But then can you translate that and can you verbalize it to the other players? Because it's great that Luka and Kyrie see all this stuff in Coach Kidd, but, there's 3 other guys out there, and they all got to be on the same page. So he does a great job of motivating the players, but being honest with them. 1 through 18, including the two-way players. You got to be honest with these guys and coach them hard and tell them the truth. He does a great job at that.
Coach, one of the things that I've been wanting to ask since Brian said you were going to be here is coming from a spot where you didn't play in the NBA, and like you said, you have to be in a point where you can coach these guys up. What was your oh my moment when you saw a player do something? Whether it was
I got it. For sure. I got one that comes right to my mind. I think it was our first. I want to say it was our first practice. And if you're ever fortunate to sit close or have good seats at an NBA game, the size, speed, and athleticism of these guys is incredible. I remember I was standing under the basket in the downstairs American Airlines practice gym, and JJ Barea came off to his left hand off a mid pick and roll and threw like an underhand lob pass, and Dwight Powell speed rolled out of the screen, slipped out, caught it with one hand like outside his frame, outside his shoulder, and dunked it. And I was just like 2 feet away from it. I was just like, yeah, this is different. This is big boy basketball. I specifically remember that. That was like my second day at work. I was like, man, this is unreal. Like I got to pinch myself every day. Like any day that my hand works and I get to scan into the facility, it's a good day. Like I love what I do. I'm so lucky.
So let's follow that up with, when did you realize you belonged? What was the moment that you said, you know what, I am adding to these folks?
Yeah, and I think when you're in a video room or, now even like a player development coordinator, it's so much, support system positions. But the best way to learn for me was, hey, shut your mouth and work in the video room for 6 years. Most guys don't do that. That's a long time, but that's the only way you can learn the game and learn play calls and learn player tendencies and coaching situations and the games. Like, it's like you're getting a PhD in basketball.
So we are talking with Pete Crawford, former UMD Bulldog. He has been proclaimed as Rhett McDonald's favorite teammate of all time, by the way. I'd like to add that in for you.
That's quite the statement, yeah. But tell him the check's in the mail.
I will do that. I will certainly do that. People write checks still? That's good to hear, Pete. But at the same time...
Venmo.
There you go. There you go. But I want to talk to you a little bit about something you just said with the speed and athleticism and how intense that has gotten and how it seems to increase with every generation of players. How has that, in your mind, impacted strategy? Because now, of course, when you think of video, we have challenges. We didn't used to have that.
Yep.
Rick Carlisle got maligned for what he did in Game 1 for not choosing to foul. Well, how did we know Jaylen Brown was going to hit a contested three like that?
Yes.
What do you think of the way the game has changed and how it's approached now?
And everybody's a Monday morning quarterback.
Absolutely.
You turn on the ESPN, the talk shows, it's, this guy was open. They should have fouled him. Well, that play, they botched and messed up the curl switch to even be in that situation. If you're going to switch everything, it's got to be get the bodies, press up, he curls off, switch it, and then get to the corner. But and that's obviously, the game plan stuff, but that's why the playoffs are great. They're trying to make guys go to their second and third move because everybody knows everybody's play calls, everybody's tendencies. Unfortunately, Luka was able to get to if you're a Timberwolves fan, was able to get to his go-to move, but everybody is so locked in the level of detail and scouting, not only for a regular season game in the NBA, but the playoffs is even multiplied times 10. It's so in-depth, and there's video and analytics, and guys are so locked into the playoffs. And that's why we lost we beat Atlanta, and then we lost to Miami in the play-in, but I love the playoffs. It's the highest form of basketball you can watch. And the EuroLeague Final Four is about to go on right now, too, which I love watching the EuroLeague as well.
That's when you know that you're a basketball junkie. Pete, I got to ask you this. I know I've asked about, coach, and I've asked about, basically what it's like to be in the video room for the Bulls, what have you. Just take me to Pete the basketball junkie instead, because I have to ask you this. I know from your time at UMD that you are a massive Timberwolves fan, or at least were. I don't know if, as an employee of another team, if you can say that you are present tense.
No, for sure. And even growing up with my dad and brother, watching, the Timberwolves with KG, and, in 04 when they played the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, me, my dad, and my brother used to watch the Wolves on FSN North every night. And I was fortunate enough to know Jim Peterson with, Sanjay Lumpkin playing at Vanille. So,
right.
But and Jim Peterson and Michael Grady do a phenomenal job. They're one of my favorite announcing duos in the league. But
I would agree. So here's my question, because you're connected to Rick Carlisle. You're connected to Jason Kidd. You're connected to the Chicago Bulls. But you are a Timberwolves fan from the upbringing. Where is your fandom, if you're even allowed to have any, this time of year right now?
I'm able to kind of cut it off and separate, when I don't forget who signs your paycheck. That's what I always say.
Right.
So, I wear black and red now, and that's who my allegiances are for. But, I have a lot of good, obviously growing up Timberwolves fan, that's just, growing up in Golden Valley and watching them and, watching Kevin Garnett. But, being in Dallas and, being able to be around Dirk, and I have so many good friends, Sean Sweeney's from St. Paul, went to Creighton and St. Thomas. He's running their defense. He's doing an incredible job, and he's one of the rising stars and assistant coaches. There's a lot of good friends over there. And even on their staff, look at their staff. Jason Kidd, Jared Dudley. Jared Dudley played 15 years in the league.
Right.
Daryl Armstrong played 15 years. Kyle Shamgod is an elite player development coach. They have some great basketball minds over there. And we do in Chicago as well. We have Coach Donovan, Maurice Cheeks. Just the guys you're able to be around is so cool.
I love the names that Pete Crawford is dropping right now. It reminds me of all the NBA video games.
I want to be a name dropper too, but I'm just saying, I'm very lucky.
No, I didn't call you a name dropper. I just said you're dropping names that takes me back rather well. Dave, this is fun. I know you got a question for him.
Yeah, I have a question actually based on something he just said about players going from regular season to playoffs and locking in. Coach,
yes.
Is there somebody that maybe, I'm not going to say lackadaisical, but kind of took the season a little easier, and when they locked into the playoffs, you went, oh my, where was this guy the whole time?
I think it's more so, the stars are going to be the stars, right? You're, for the most part, know what you're going to get out of Ant, Kyrie or Luka or those guys. But I think it's the role players where you see, especially in playoff games, look at, whether that's Naz Reid hitting 7 threes or McDaniels hitting 6 threes, or look at the Celtics. Celtics have, Derek White can go off. Porzingis is obviously banged up, but Drew Holiday, those role players, you need those guys. Those guys, when they make a jump, you usually 9 times out of 10 win those playoff games when role players have big games. You see it back in the day, even with Shaq and Robert Horry, guys hitting shots. Those guys are going to get doubled at the end of the game a lot of times. So the ball's going to find you.
Now it's a show. Anytime there's a Big Shot Bob reference, I like it even more. Pete, I want to close with this. Obviously, we're in Duluth. We're live at Hoops Brewing right now. You talked about your days as a Bulldog, and it's kind of a once a Bulldog, always a Bulldog type thing. I know the coaching regime has changed, but how thrilled are you with what Justin Wick is doing? Because UMD Bulldog basketball is clearly an event right now.
Oh, I'm ecstatic. I got my UMD Bulldogs hat in my backpack.
That a baby. Put it on right now.
I love what he's doing. To see, even when he was at Moorhead and he was an assistant coach, and to come here and, try to recruit the cities in Wisconsin. And Gary and Coach Bowen did that as well.
Right.
But, just the guys they've been able to get and sprinkling in transfers, like, he's a great, great coach. And I got to get back up there. It's been so long since I've been back up there, but to see them be top 25 and nationally ranked and go on deep tournament runs, I'm proud. And those guys have done such an amazing job, his whole staff and the players.
That is absolutely correct. Pete Crawford, I got to tell you this. We could talk basketball with you for hours. Unfortunately, we only have so much time today. What I'm trying to get at by saying that is we could certainly bug you again. Can we do that in future shows, please?
Of course. I would love to do that again.
All right. Well, you have found yourself a radio home. Thank you for the time today. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Yes, thank you guys for having me on. Have a good weekend.
Absolutely. That is Bulldog alum Pete Crawford with the video room experience with the Bulls, with the Mavs. That's insight we just don't figure we're going to get, and now we might get it quite often.
Well, and basketball junkies, right? If you want the inside story and not just like with Vincey, we talk about stuff that's inside, not necessarily fan speak. That's what you got right there. That was awesome.
Good foreshadowing. The last segment of the day will be Vincey Glenn. I'm wondering if my mom will scramble down upon hearing that. But for now, we're just 3/4 of the way into hour one. Plenty of show left. We're going to play Buy or Sell next. We are the Northland Sports Page. Stick around. Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook. We're live at Hoops Brewing. Come on down, get some Harbor Monster tickets, grab a beer, have some fun with us. We will be right back. Normally, we're a very honest show, but it is not from the studio downtown Duluth. We are on site here at Hoops Brewing, Northland Sports Page. Coming away from 10 to noon. Still plenty of time to come down. There are Harbor Monster tickets available. There's great beer available. Always great beer at Hoops Brewing. Hoops is just one of our many terrific sponsors. Dave Cook, you've got plenty of love to give the others as well.
Well, like you were saying, when you start, when you're at one of your sponsors, it's kind of easy to start there. But let's also add Mike Regan from Christensen Group Insurance, the Blackwoods Group, including their locations on London Road, Blackwater right downtown, Tavern on the Hill, well, frankly, Brian, up on the hill, Proctor with the event center as well, and then the location in Two Harbors. Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Stuart Spike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, Kraus Heating and Cooling, and Arola Architecture Studio.
Arola Architecture Studio brings you Drawing Lines each and every week. That will close the show again today. Drawing Lines will feature Vincey Glenn. Vincey will join us by phone. I mentioned we're at Hoops Brewing. Speaking of joining us by phone, the proprietor, Mr. Dave Hoops. Oh, by the way, the worldly traveled gentleman is in Paris. We're going to see how well the phone connection goes there in about 20 minutes.
Madison, Paris, what's the difference?
Right. Rural Wisconsin didn't work so well. We'll see if Eiffel Tower versus the Stifle Tower works a little better.
Right. Exactly what we're going to see. Maybe Dave prefers one over the other. Maybe we should ask him that.
But you may notice that we haven't lamented the Timberwolves loss too badly. It was a tough one to swallow, but another game tomorrow. And part of it, too, is there's some good things going on in sports as we prepare for Buy or Sell. The Twins have recovered nicely from a 7-game skid to win their last 3. And oh, by the way, PWHL Minnesota, they don't have a nickname, but their nickname soon could be champions if they keep going the right direction.
Wouldn't that be a great nickname?
It would.
That would be like so 1940s, pre-NHL stuff. What do we name our teams? Do we just win? All right. We are now officially the Minnesota champions. The Huzzahs or something like that.
I think that'd be great if they went with champions because other people may not know how to interpret it. It's like when we used to play intramurals in college. We always wanted to name our team Bye. So whoever we were playing thought they had a bye, didn't show, and we went undefeated by forfeit.
Nice. Very good.
So we've mentioned our sponsors. We want you to buy everything that they're selling. It is time to play Buy or Sell. Nick Stoltman, I think you like this segment. Would you like to come back in and play with us?
I'll give it a try.
All right, so here's how the game works if you're new to it. Even if you're not, it's still how it works. I'm going to give a statement for each of the 4 major men's sports leagues. If the guys agree, they're going to say buy, and they're going to tell me why. If the guys disagree, they're going to say sell and tell me why. Now, usually this is Dave's responsibility. We can pass it to Nick today if you'd like.
He was good at it.
But the responsibility is
Dave.
to give piping hot takes. You guys can hug it out later if you want. But their responsibility is to give piping hot takes and also to determine the order in which we play.
Let's start. Well, let's go NBA.
Okay. So the NBA, losing these 2 games at home has obviously been bad news for the Minnesota Timberwolves. This is a bit of a personal opinion topic, but I want you guys to expand on it in your world. So buy or sell that having to listen to Draymond Green on TNT is almost as bad as losing the game itself.
I am going to sell that. I kind of like listening to Draymond. Now, the thing about Draymond is if your team is playing well, then he's a blast to listen to. If your team is not good, he is really good at picking your team apart. So when they won the final game against Dallas, I listened to Draymond, and it was like, this guy is fantastic because he was so into
the final
what they
game
were
against
doing.
Denver.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Because
he's foreshadowing Wolves in 7.
Yeah.
Because he bought into what we were doing. He could read, he reads the game so well. And if you stink, man, he's willing to say these guys are awful.
I got to agree with Dave, actually, because
you guys are nuts. Go ahead.
So, while there were some fans at the game afterward that clearly did not like him being there, they were yelling at him. It was kind of funny. But obviously, do I like hearing that as a fan? Not so much. But at the same time, I mean, I can appreciate different perspectives, I guess, is where I'm going to go with that.
So you said something that segues perfectly to me right there because I'm going to sell. Draymond is a bleeping clown. I know he's got championship pedigree, and he's been a big part of it, but it's still Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson was a big part of the championships he won as well. Draymond, in a weird way, reminds me of me when I get fixated on something because you said different perspectives. If he's giving those, I'm all for it because of the resume I talked about. He has an agenda. I realize that Rudy got worked on that last shot last night. So if you don't like Rudy Gobert already, you got carte blanche to go ahead and pick on the guy. But that's basically all he's there to do. And it's getting a little bit ridiculous. It's reminiscent of people who are Viking fans when Ed Donatel was a defensive coordinator and the defense would get torched for 500 yards up and down the field. And then let's say Draymond's perspective would be, well, what do you expect? You can't win with Kirk Cousins. Huh? You might be right, but that wasn't the problem today. It also reminds me of, the Twins would go on a 5-game losing skid and Joe Mauer is a first ballot Hall of Famer. But I never was a big Joe Mauer fan, and I would say, well, Mauer came up with runners on first and third in the 8th and hit into a 4-6-3 double play. Obviously, he's the reason we lost. No, but you have an agenda and you stick to it. That's all Draymond is doing, and it's getting old.
He plays the bit.
Yeah,
well, I think
hard.
I think Draymond, Brian, for you is a little AJ Przinsky because if he was on pulling on your side, you'd be like, that guy we want. And now that he's leaning on the other side, it's like, oh, I hate that guy.
He's awful. I guess you're right. If the Wolves were winning, obviously I hope the Wolves win Game 3 for a plethora of reasons. But one of them is I'm intrigued if Draymond has to think of something else to say. He'll talk about everybody else who carried us and Gobert stood around and watched. What are we doing? All right, 1 down, 3 to go.
Oh, let's go baseball action.
All right, baseball. I've got a couple of buy or sells that are basically gauging your level of concern. Dave, you and I talked about this on the ride in today. I said good win by the Twins last night. Duran looked a little more stable. Little more. Still some dicey moments. Before that was home run du jour, home run derby, if you will. And then in an interview, he said, hey, I don't pick the pitches. I just throw what they ask me to do. Almost like I'm just an employee doing my job.
Yeah.
Buy or sell that Johan Duran's performance and demeanor have you concerned right now?
He's earned the respect to make those kind of decisions and those kind of comments because he's proven over 3 years that he does know what he's doing. And there is proof that they actually did call the curveball and he waved it off.
Right.
And they said, kind of like, hey, buddy, you're not waving this one off. You're starting with the curveball. Bang, 450 yards, not feet, 450 yards later. Right.
That's 1,350 feet.
It was hit well. That now if he's going to set up the curveball with the heat instead, people struggle with 102 with movement, so the idea is to throw 98 bender.
All right, so the name of the segment is buy or sell. You said neither one. What are we doing?
Oh, I am selling it. I think I'm not worried about him at all.
Very good.
I'm going to buy just that. We're in a situation where we're off to a rough start, and I feel like it's kind of an attitude thing there that's kind of where I'm at with it.
I'm going to sell, and Dave kind of stole my thunder, but that's okay. That's why I go last in this. But your final point was your best one. It is concerning if he's like, hey, I don't make the decisions. I just do what I'm told. I don't think it's that kind of culture in that clubhouse. But at the end of the day, if he's throwing 101 at your knuckles, you aren't going to do much against him anyway.
True.
I think we're concerned because
that's the changeup. Right?
The Twins are in a number of one-run games, and your closer is going to be white-knuckle time all the time anyway.
Yeah, and he's the guy, like I said, that's earned it. You just say, hey, what do you want to throw here?
Right. I think the bigger problem is the bridge to get to him. Jax was unbelievable last night. This team needs Brock Stewart back.
They do. And who'd have thought we'd ever say that?
My fantasy team needs Brock Stewart back, but I digress.
18 months ago, if I said we need Stewart back, you'd say they need an upgrade in the locker room because Martha's not available.
I would have said, Shannon, Dave, which one are we going with? That would have been interesting. All right, 2 down, 2 to go.
Football.
You got NHL and NFL left.
Football.
All right, again, gauging your level of concern. I will admit that a couple years ago I had to Google OTAs because I legitimately thought that the O was optional. It's not. It's organized team activities.
I see.
But plenty of veterans treat this as an optional idea, and it literally says in the definition, these are not mandatory. But the most important piece to the Vikings is not there. Buy or sell that Justin Jefferson's absence concerns you.
Sell.
Okay.
I couldn't sell it any harder
Okay.
because this is becoming a rite of passage for players that are looking for any kind of, whether it's contract, whether it's whatever, they don't come to organize. They'll be here for mandatory, but for organized, it's, who cares?
Fair enough.
Big sell, yeah. Because I think this has been a thing for, wasn't last year, didn't he not show too?
Right.
So,
This is Hawkinson's, I bruised my toe time.
Yeah,
right, from
that's
last
right.
year.
Yeah, I
Yes,
bruised my
yes.
toe. Oh, look, I got $100 million. I think I'll bruise a bunch next season.
Yes.
All right, so somebody's got to be different, so I'll go ahead and buy.
Please.
I don't necessarily believe in what I'm saying,
How
but
are you going to do this?
We're putting you in a spot, Brian.
But I am an experienced enough Minnesota fan where every time something doesn't go according to the initial plan, you go, how is this going to end? Now, I still think Justin Jefferson is going to sign here, be here long term, and they're going to be fine. But we've heard about it for 2 months. It's reminiscent of when Danielle Hunter's injury was just a tweak, and that tweak cost him the whole season. So I'll just satisfy the Minnesota sports narrative folks and say, I'd be worried because that contract isn't a done deal yet. You're glaring at me, and don't worry, I don't believe what I just said.
No, that's not the reason. I want to ask this.
I can see you. My peripherals are
If
sharp.
Danielle Hunter would have said, hey, my back or my neck hurts,
my back.
And the Vikings would have said, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to provide you the greatest surgeon of all time, and let's get that fixed. And he was like, my neck and back still hurt. They've already come out and they said, listen, JJ's going to be the highest played non-quarterback in NFL history. And it's still not done. So, what's the point? The Vikings have said what they're going to do, and it's everything you'd ever want.
You want to read between the lines? They said he's going to be the highest paid, this, that, and the other thing. Doesn't say with the Vikings. That's the concern.
Right, that's true.
And as far as
it's the Vikings saying
your fake take there, I love that.
And as far as Danielle Hunter, instead of getting the greatest surgeon in the world, they got me playing Operation. It didn't go real well. That game was hard, man. My motor skills were not great. All right, you've got one left. Do you remember what it is?
It is the NHL.
It is. All right, so this is kind of a fun Pandora's box because, Dave, you and I have talked about football is the only one with a one-and-done playoff system. Major League Baseball has series, but baseball is just kind of a different animal. The NBA and the NHL, they run parallel to each other, and they run very similarly. So buy or sell, Stanley Cup is tougher to win than the Larry O'Brien Trophy.
Whew, that's a good one.
Thank you. I get paid for the good ones.
I am going to buy it because it's so much more physical. And when I say that, I mean it is a constant grind. It is not just physical when it needs to be physical, but guys are and they're allowed to be a little bit dirtier and all that. In the NBA, if some of the stuff that went on in the NHL would not only wouldn't it be, somebody'd be arrested for it, right? And so I think the NHL is more difficult to get to Lord Stanley's Cup than the Larry O'Brien. And that doesn't mean getting to Larry O'Brien is easy, because it's not.
Right.
I just think the NHL playoffs can kind of get eye-rolly stupid.
I think it can, too. I tossed and turned over this. Go ahead.
Well, Dave's in my head this morning, I think, is part of the problem.
Dude.
But get out of there.
And I got to deal with both of them.
Rent-free. That's the thing. You're like, oh, my gosh, why am I dealing with these two if Dave's in his head?
It's like, here's Dave's take, and then here's Nick with the best of Dave.
Exactly. That, what he said.
Yeah.
Well, so I just for the sake of, I agree with what Dave said, actually, and if I were to.
Somebody's got to.
Yeah, so I will agree with that.
Dana's not listening?
Just to be difficult, I will say, well, no, it's about the same. I don't believe that. I'm going to do with Brian here, and I'm going to say a take I don't actually have my heart behind, but I'll say it's similar. It's not.
That's hilarious for this reason. If you would have stuck with agreeing with Dave, the three of us would have been on the same page.
Okay.
Somebody
had to do it.
Because I actually do buy that the Stanley Cup's a little bit tougher, and I do think it's simply because, well, there is defense in the NBA, and yes, you can make the argument that no, there isn't. Well, yes, there is. But there's not a specific defender-type position. Let's be honest. The trip to the Stanley Cup Finals and to win it, how often does it fall on a hot goaltender? Look at what the Florida Panthers are doing. Bobrovsky is the reason why.
The answer is always.
Yeah.
It always
You get a
falls
hot
on
goaltender, and that's completely different. The other thing is, and I'm not as well-versed in hockey as I am the other three sports, but I don't think matchup-wise teams are glaringly different. Where you look at the NBA, and the Timberwolves got by Phoenix. They got by Denver. They're struggling to get by Dallas. The way that those three teams play, matchup-wise, you're playing a completely different brand of the sport from week to week. Maybe I'm shunning hockey a little bit, but to me, hockey's hockey. You connect the dots kind of the same way. Different teams have different strengths. I get it. And Edmonton, one of your favorites, plays a little more fire wagon, but I think overall it's close enough that you're not going, oh, geez, now we play these guys. We got to completely 180 and come up with a totally different game plan, where I think in basketball you do. So it's tough, but I'm going to go Stanley Cup just barely, tougher to win. In Minnesota, they all are because we don't have them.
You're right about the NBA matchup bit. That's different than in the NHL, because you look at Edmonton, Dallas right now. Dallas is basically Minnesota, where they have depth.
Nobody wants to hear that.
Their depth is on their depth, right? They can run four lines.
Yeah.
And Edmonton's got the greatest player in the last decade, followed by maybe the fourth or fifth greatest player in the last decade. They've got that.
Is that McDavid and Draisaitl in that order?
Yes.
Okay.
They've got the other way, man. You weren't watching the game if you said that.
Wow, but I mean, let's go resume. We're putting Draisaitl ahead of McDavid.
But so in a way, it's similar to how it's set up in the Maverick Timberwolves game, where you got Luka and Kyrie against the entire pack of Wolves.
Right.
Did you see what I did there?
You did rather well.
That was good.
I was going to put you on a McDonald's menu and have you be a McDavid, but go ahead.
that was pretty solid. But the difference is that the Timberwolves were a nightmare matchup for Phoenix.
Right.
A bad
Except
matchup
for the regular season somehow.
A bad matchup for Denver, but what we thought was going to be a tough matchup against Dallas, it's turned out that their two superstars are able to eat our defenders' lunch right now. And so, and again, Cat's sitting the last 8 minutes because he can't score on somebody named Lively.
All right, well done, fellas. This was a lively segment. Buy or sell is done. Hour one is done. Still plenty of time to come on down to Hoops Brewing. Join Jen, Laverne, Jay, and another gentleman popped in too. So we're growing exponentially, but come on down to Hoops. We hope to see a great crowd by the time Monster Weekend kickoff begins. I'm going to have to get that show out a little more smoothly as the shows progress.
I could have worded it more difficultly for you, Brian.
I don't think you could have. I think you did rather well.
Okay.
But hour one is done. We're at Hoops Brewing. Round of applause if you enjoy the products here at Hoops Brewing. All right, the man who is responsible for that, with all due respect to Brian in the back, the man who is responsible for that is Dave Hoops himself, and he's worriedly traveled again this week. He joins us from Paris, cell phone permitting. Stick around. We'll be right back.